أنا دكتور خالد وليد، ربان سفينة النجاة إلى شواطئ بكة القدس. I am Dr. Khaled Waleed, the captain of the ship of salvation to the shores of Baka, Jerusalem.
Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive into the fascinating world of knowledge.
Hello, everyone.
Today we're embarking on, well, a truly unique journey, exploring some profound and, you could say, revolutionary interpretations of sacred texts and historical narratives. This deep dive comes to us from a listener who wanted us to thoroughly explore a body of work that offers a strikingly different lens on what many consider established facts. They urged us to understand it deeply and impartially.
Indeed. And we're diving into a pretty comprehensive collection of ideas here put forth by Dr. Khaled Waleed, mainly articulated through his YouTube channel, Almighty Covenant.
Right, Almighty Covenant.
Yeah, his work really challenges conventional understandings. It proposes a rigorous rereading of ancient texts, historical events too, aiming to uncover what he presents as their original precise meanings.
So digging for something lost, maybe?
You could say that. It's definitely an opportunity to engage with a perspective that seeks to reveal previously missing ideas and connections, providing really a whole new framework for understanding.
That's right. So our mission today is to unpack these insights. We'll examine the specific details, the linguistic analyses, the thematic links that Dr. Waleed highlights across the various sources he references. And as always, our aim is just to understand these ideas thoroughly. We want to make sure that you, our listener, are well informed about this particular viewpoint. And the evidence, as Dr. Waleed presents it on his Almighty Covenant channel, that underpins it.
Exactly. Understanding the claims and the reasoning behind them.
So let's unpack this. Okay, so to start, Dr. Waleed's approach, it often begins with a really rigorous re-examination of Arabic terminology within the Quran, right?
Absolutely fundamental to his work. He argues quite forcefully, actually, that many key words have been misunderstood or perhaps even deliberately distorted over time.
Deliberately. That's a strong claim.
It is. And this foundational linguistic analysis, which you see consistently on the Almighty Covenant channel, it isn't just a minor tweak, it's absolutely key to his broader interpretations. It shapes pretty much everything that follows.
Okay, so language first. Where does he start? What's a key example?
Well, one of the most striking reinterpretations Dr. Waleed offers is the concept of justice, or adlo in Arabic.
Adl, justice. Seems straightforward.
You'd think so. Conventionally, adl is often understood as balance or fairness, equity, a concept often conveyed by another word, quist.
Okay.
But Dr. Waleed posits a radically different meaning. He asserts that adl in the Quran fundamentally signifies to deviate from or to avoid something entirely, keeping the soul.
Deviate from. So the opposite of balance.
In a way, yes. His argument hinges on examining the linguistic root of adl. He contends this root inherently carries the meaning of turning away or swerving, deviating, not balancing.
Okay, so if adl means deviate from, what does that mean for justice?
Well, this redefinition, as articulated by Dr. Waleed through Almighty Covenant, it carries immense implications. If adl means to deviate from, then true justice isn't about seeking a middle ground or striving for equality in all things, like we might traditionally think.
Right.
Rather, from his perspective, it's about recognizing what is absolutely forbidden.
Like polytheism, maybe?
Exactly. Recognizing what's forbidden and then completely abstaining from it. Turning away entirely. It's a very stark, uncompromising vision of righteousness.
Okay. Does he back this up with specific verses?
He does. For example, he connects this interpretation to Surah Al-An'am, verse 150. It describes those who don't believe in the hereafter as they deviate from their Lord. Because they deviate from their Lord, using that very root.
Yalalung. Deviate.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And Dr. Waleed presents this specific verse and interpretation as a crucial key to Israel's polytheism. He implies that their deviation from God's monotheism isn't just an imbalance, but the ultimate injustice, a fundamental turning away from the pure path.
So the core insight here from Dr. Waleed is that justice isn't about finding balance. It's about absolute moral clarity and complete avoidance of what's deemed wrong. Very black and white view, really.
It is. Uncompromising is a good word for it.
And it's not just abstract concepts like justice. Dr. Waleed, through his analysis on Almighty Covenant, also delves into very specific terms related to family and lineage. And these seem to have huge implications for understanding the prophetic narratives.
Absolutely huge. particularly regarding who truly begets and who merely nurtures. His work meticulously dissects the terms used for family.
Like father.
Exactly. He draws a very sharp distinction between Ab and Waleed.
Ab and Waleed. Okay, what's the difference in his view?
As Dr. Waleed explains it, Waleed refers specifically to the biological begetter, the one who possesses the authentic DNA, as he puts it, and physically brings a child into existence. The biological father.
Waleed, biological dad. Got it.
Right. In contrast, Ab refers to a guardian, an educator, someone who nurtures and raises a child, whether they are biologically related or not. A foster father, a mentor, a guardian figure, that's the Ab.
So Ab is more about the role, the nurturing, not the biology necessarily.
Precisely. And his argument for this distinction isn't just, a feeling. He argues that the Quran itself uses these terms with precise, differentiated meanings based on their grammatical forms and how they're applied in context. He sees a clear delineation between biological fatherhood and guardianship within the text itself.
Okay, so where does this distinction become really important?
Well, this distinction, emphasized heavily by Dr. Waleed, is pivotal for understanding many Quranic narratives. He supports this by citing passages like the story of Joseph in Surah Yusuf, verse 78.
Right.
Joseph's brothers refer to their father, Jacob, as a very old a sheik who is old. Dr. Waleed interprets this to confirm that Jacob did not beget all of them in the Walid sense.
Meaning Jacob wasn't the biological father of all the brothers.
That's Dr. Waleed's interpretation. That Jacob functioned as their nurturer and guardian, but not necessarily the Walid for all 12.
Wow, okay. Any other examples?
Yes. He also points to Surat al-Qasas, verse 23. The daughters of Shuaib refer to him as Abuna, our father. Again, Dr. Waleed argues this clarifies that Shuaib did not beget them biologically, but rather raised and nurtured them, fulfilling the role of an Ab.
So the implication here is pretty massive, isn't it?
It's profound. As presented by Dr. Waleed in Almighty Covenant, this distinction is crucial for understanding the true nature of kinship in these narratives. It dramatically impacts who we understand to be a true descendant biologically versus through education or guardianship. It fundamentally reshapes those traditional family trees of the prophets.
It really does. And you mentioned the word sheikh there with Jacob. Does Dr. Waleed have a specific take on that term too?
He does. He scrutinizes sheikh and also kabir with similar linguistic precision. He claims that sheikh denotes someone incapable of procreation. Specifically, someone whose water, meaning sperm, is mu'atal, defective or non-functional. And importantly, he says this is regardless of their actual age.
So sheikh isn't just old man, it's specifically infertile man.
According to Dr. Waleed's interpretation, yes, it's about a specific physiological state of infertility, not just age. Then kabir, when used alongside sheikh, specifically refers to old age. So you can be an old sheikh, meaning old and infertile.
Okay, that adds another layer. How does this redefinition affect the stories?
Well, this linguistic nuance, as presented by Dr. Waleed, radically redefines how we understand accounts of miraculous births.
Like Abraham having children late in life.
Exactly. He applies this to Abraham in Surah Ibrahim, verse 39. Abraham, despite being described as a sheikh, meaning infertile in this framework, was blessed with children only upon old age. For Dr. Waleed, this implies divine intervention was absolutely necessary, not just because Abraham was old, but because his natural ability was compromised in that sheikh or mu'atal sense.
So the miracle wasn't just overcoming age, but overcoming actual infertility.
That's the argument. A much greater miracle, in a way. He applies the same logic to Shuaib and Jacob in their narratives, too. It impacts how we see the births of Isaac and Ishmael, suggesting the miracle was about overcoming a fundamental biological incapacity, the sheikh status, not just advanced years.
These redefinitions from Dr. Waleed's work, they definitely lead to very different conclusions about family, procreation, even miracles in these well-known stories. It makes you wonder how deep this linguistic reevaluation goes.
It goes deeper still. Dr. Waleed extends these linguistic concepts, these ideas about fertility and infertility, to the physical state of the land itself.
To geography, how does that work?
Yes, tying them to barrenness and sterility, not just of individuals, but of geographical locations. He meticulously differentiates between aqim, barren, akim, sterile, and ajiz, helpless, incapable.
Okay, break those down based on his interpretation.
According to Dr. Waleed, akim describes a woman who is actually fertile in her soil. Her womb or ovaries are fine, But her husband's water, his sperm, is defective, Akim. The problem is with the male source.
Akim, problem with the water.
Right. His linguistic argument points to the root of Akim, suggesting a permanent, inherent inability to produce offspring due to a problem with the source, the male water.
Okay, and a queer.
Akir, on the other hand, describes a woman who is also fertile, but something physically prevents the water from reaching the soil. An external blockage, maybe, something that could potentially be repaired or overcome.
Akir blockage, potentially fixable.
That's his interpretation, yes. He argues the root implies a temporary or external obstruction. And finally, ajiz is then defined simply as the stage of menopause for a woman, natural helplessness or incapacity to conceive due to age, distinct from the other two more specific conditions.
Right. Does he connect these back to the prophet's wives?
He does. He supports these claims by referring to Abraham's wife, Sarah. She's described as old and Akim in Surat Hud, verse 72.
Akim. So the issue was Abraham's water.
That's Dr. Waleed's interpretation, yes. It fits his earlier Sheikh definition for Abraham infertile due to defective water. Conversely, Zechariah's wife is described as Akir.
Akir, the blockage.
Implying an external issue that was repaired by divine intervention, allowing her to conceive John the Baptist. This linguistic precision, as revealed by Dr. Waleed from Almighty Covenant, profoundly shifts the traditional understanding of barrenness in these stories. It places the defect, as he sees it, not inherently on the woman, but on the man, a quim, or an external repairable factor, a q.
So these individual redefinitions of fertility are fascinating in themselves. But I understand Dr. Waleed then makes an even larger leap, applying these very concepts to the spiritual state of entire lands. How does that manifest in his analysis?
That's precisely where his work takes a really expansive and frankly controversial turn. He applies these redefinitions of fertility metaphorically to sacred lands, presenting a perspective on their spiritual states that departs significantly from mainstream views.
Okay, this sounds like a major part of his thesis.
It is. It's important to stress, as we explore this, that Dr. Waleed's interpretations, while he argues them meticulously within his own framework, represent a significant departure from widely held theological and historical consensus within Abrahamic traditions.
Understood. Presenting his view as he presents it. So what does he claim?
Okay. He identifies Mecca, but not the city in Saudi Arabia. He specifically identifies it as Petra in Jordan.
Mecca is Petra. Okay, wow.
Yes, and he claims this Mecca Petra is Aquim, barren.
Aquim, meaning the problem is inherent, like defective water.
Metaphorically, yes. He argues it's Aquim because its inhabitants, whom he identifies as the Majuj and polytheists, are najis.
Najis.
Unclean filth. He says their spiritual corruption renders the land spiritually infertile. Aquim.
So the people's impurity makes the land barren in a spiritual sense.
That's his argument. Dr. Waleed, through Almighty Covenant, describes this Mecca Petra as Masjid Dirar, a mosque of harm, a term from the Quran for a mosque built with bad intentions.
Right.
He also calls it a well of no use and a built palace, implying it's man-made and spiritually empty. As supporting evidence for this spiritual barrenness, he states that Abraham did not procreate in Mecca at all until he emigrated from it.
Only having children elsewhere.
Exactly. He emphasizes Abraham was only blessed with offspring in Bakka the Blessed, a place Dr. Waleed distinguishes sharply from Mecca Petra. The implication is a direct challenge to the traditional sanctity of the current Mecca. The defect isn't the land itself, but its inhabitants and their polytheism, rendering it Aquim.
Okay, so Mecca Petra is Akim because of its Najis inhabitants. What about Bakka? You said he distinguishes it.
He does, very sharply. In stark contrast, Dr. Waleed identifies Bakka as Al-Quds, Jerusalem, in Palestine.
Bakka is Jerusalem.
Yes. And he describes Bakka Al-Quds as Akir, sterile.
Akir. That was the blockage one, right? Potentially fixable.
Exactly. This sterility, he explains, is due to the presence of the Yajuj from Bani Israel, whom he characterizes as Gayesh.
Reish, another term for impurity.
Yes, Reish also means impure, but Dr. Waleed seems to differentiate it from Najis. He argues these Reish inhabitants are corrupting Bakka's sacred center. He uses a powerful Quranic metaphor, depicting Bakka Quds as God's she-camel that was hamstrung by these impure inhabitants.
So Najis for Mecca Petra's people, Reish for Bakka Al-Quds people. What's the key difference in his view?
The crucial distinction, as per Dr. Waleed's work on Almighty Covenant, seems to be that Najis filth implies a more pervasive, inherent corruption rendering the land barren, Aquim, whereas Rizas impurity, suggests an external impurity that prevents the land from yielding its spiritual fruit, even though the land itself might be inherently good.
So Baka Jerusalem is fundamentally good, but currently sterile due to the Riza's inhabitants blocking its potential.
That appears to be the implication in Dr. Waleed's framework. The land itself is inherently good, pure at its core, but its spiritual sterility is caused by the impurity of its inhabitants, who, in his view, must be removed for it to recover and fulfill its divine purpose.
So the concepts of individual infertility become these profound metaphors for the spiritual state of entire places, based entirely on who inhabits them and their spiritual condition, as defined by Dr. Waleed. This isn't just a geographical adjustment, it's a fundamental rewriting of Abrahamic history and pilgrimage, completely upending centuries of tradition and redirecting the very axis of faith towards Jerusalem, in his view.
It's a radical reinterpretation, absolutely. A significant shift in perspective and a fundamental challenge to establish sacred geography.
Okay, so building on these really intricate linguistic distinctions and the geographical shifts, how does Dr. Waleed, through Almighty Covenant, alter the understanding of the prophetic lineages themselves? It seems like that map is getting redrawn too.
Completely redrawn, both genealogically and geographically. As you say, it's a foundational reevaluation of long-held beliefs that will definitely challenge many listeners. Let's start with his reconception of Abraham's progeny.
Right, this seems central. He challenges the roles of Ishmael and Isaac, doesn't he?
He does, quite dramatically. He asserts Ishmael's primary position within Abraham's lineage. This is a bold claim, especially given how many traditional narratives tend to focus more heavily on Isaac.
How does he argue for Ishmael's primacy?
Well, contrary to narratives that might minimize Ishmael's role or even his parentage, Dr. Waleed claims Ishmael was Abraham's first and primary gift, Haba, from God. He explicitly refutes the notion that Ishmael was from a different mother or lineage. He describes claims of Hagar being Ishmael's mother as sick and fabricated.
Wow, strong word. So only one initial gift.
That's his argument. The Quran presents Abraham receiving one initial gift of a child, and that child, according to Dr. Waleed, was Ishmael.
How does he support that from the text?
He meticulously interprets a key phrase from Surat al-Anbiya, verse 72. And we bestowed upon him Isaac and Jacob as a supererogatory gift, nafila.
Nafila, supererogatory, meaning extra.
Exactly. Dr. Waleed argues nafila means an additional gift, a bonus, something extra provided after the primary foundational gift. This, for him, confirms that Isaac and Jacob were subsequent blessings after Ishmael, who was the initial foundational haba.
So Ishmael first, then Isaac and Jacob as an extra blessing.
That's the interpretation. And it's central to Dr. Waleed's work on Almighty Covenant. It reestablishes Ishmael as absolutely central to Abraham's direct progeny and prophetic lineage, countering narratives that might have excluded or diminished him, and emphasizing his foundational role in the divine plan for Abraham.
Okay, so Ishmael is primary. What about Jacob then, also mentioned as Nafila?
Right. Further elaborating on this lineage, Dr. Waleed contends that Jacob, Yaqub, was also a nafila, supererogatory gift, and, crucially, an educator, but emphatically not a Waleed, biological son of Abraham in the traditional sense.
Jacob wasn't Abraham's biological son, or grandson through Isaac.
Dr. Waleed's claim is even more radical regarding Jacob's own progeny. He claims Jacob did not beget biological children himself, making Jacob one who leaves no descendants in the direct biological sense.
Jacob had no biological children. What about the 12 tribes, his sons?
This is where the Ab versus Waleed distinction becomes critical again. Dr. Waleed explains that Jacob's sons, as mentioned in the Quran, are, in his interpretation, those whom he raised and educated Ekumulan, not necessarily his biological offspring.
So Jacob's sons were more like his students or adopted wards.
That's the implication of Dr. Waleed's interpretation. It fundamentally redefines the family tree. He emphasizes Jacob's status as a nafila, an additional gift, as further indicating his unique position, not a direct biological link in the standard way, but an extension of the divine gift that started with Ishmael and Isaac.
So for Almighty Covenant, this means the concept of sons, Bani for Jacob, is primarily about mentorship and education, not strict biology.
Exactly. It challenges the very notion of direct biological succession in these key prophetic lines and forces a reevaluation of the entire Abrahamic lineage as traditionally understood.
This is genuinely a radical reinterpretation of some of the most fundamental stories in Abrahamic traditions, as laid out by Dr. Waleed in Almighty Covenant. If Jacob's sons weren't all biological, and Ishmael is the primary descendant, what does this mean for the identity of the children of Israel? It seems like it would completely disconnect them from Jacob.
It leads to exactly that. A clear and emphatic separation, as articulated by Dr. Waleed. He directly states, Jacob's offspring are definitely not Israel's offspring.
Whoa, okay. That is a monumental claim. How does he justify separating Jacob from Israel when traditionally Jacob is Israel?
He argues that the term Israel in the Quran doesn't always refer to Jacob the prophet. And he claims the 12 tribes, Asbat, mentioned in the Quran refer to different groups depending on the context. He makes a distinction based on whether the term is used with a definite article, al-asbat, or indefinitely, asbatan umaman.
Okay, definite versus indefinite asbat. What's the difference according to him?
In Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 136, where al-asbat is used with the definite article al, Dr. Waleed interprets this to refer specifically to Jacob's sons, whom he raised, the ones we just discussed.
The ones who weren't all his biological children.
Right. This group, he says, includes Joseph and his brother, whom Dr. Waleed claims were sons of Ishmael's daughter through an Arab father, linking them to the pure line. The other 10, al-asbat, he describes as children of Isaac's daughter, who married an Arabian with what Dr. Waleed terms Yajujic blood.
Yajujic blood, like from Gog.
Yes, connected to Yajuj and Majuj, Gog and Magog. This mixed lineage, according to Dr. Waleed's explanation, accounts for the darkness and initial wrongdoings of some of them, like how they treated Joseph. So these al-asbat are Jacob's wards, a complex mixed group primarily defined by his mentorship.
Okay, so al-asbat are Jacob's mixed group of wards. What about the indefinite asbatan umaman?
In stark contrast, Dr. Waleed argues that in Surat Al-Araf, verse 160, where the indefinite asbatan umaman, Sisu Krebs nations is used, this refers to entirely different entities. Ancient nations of Bani Israel.
Ancient nations.
Yes, Group C claims existed before Adam.
Before Adam.
That's his claim. These groups, described as disobedient and having their own chiefs, are explicitly tied by Dr. Waleed to the cursed tree and are presented as entirely separate from Abraham's pure lineage. This is a core argument presented by Dr. Waleed through Almighty Covenant.
So he's fundamentally disconnecting the lineage of true believers from these Asbatan Umaman, these pre-Adamite nations of Bani Israel.
Precisely.
Yeah.
He often describes these Bani Israel groups as having mixed Yajujic and Majujic blood, leading to inherent hypocrisy and corruption. This intricate genetic and spiritual lineage argument is absolutely crucial to understanding Dr. Waleed's overall framework, as it creates this profound spiritual and historical chasm between two groups often conflated.
So in Dr. Waleed's view, the children of Israel, at least these Al-Asbatan Uman, are a distinct and problematic group with a different, much older pre-Adamite origin. That's a truly foundational rewriting of history and identity.
It absolutely is. Their origins and nature are a central, recurring theme in Dr. Waleed's analysis, as presented on Almighty Covenant. He claims that Israel, the entity, not necessarily the prophet Jacob in all contexts, existed before Adam, as Economics goes in.
The entity Israel predates Adam.
Yes, and he identifies this entity as the one who deviated from God's verses, Oklukunjanteyesh. This group, according to Dr. Waleed, is none other than the Yajuj and Majuj, Gog and Magog, and they are inherently polytheists.
How does he connect Israel, the entity, to Yajuj Majuj and deviation?
He links Surah Al-An'am verse 150, which talks about those who deviate, with verses in Surah Al-Araf 7.175-176. These verses describe someone given God's signs but who stripped himself of them, was followed by Satan, and became among the misguided. Dr. Waleed claims this entity is the original Israel.
So he redefines Israel, not as Jacob the prophet, but as this corrupt pre-Adam entity, synonymous with Yajuj Majuj.
That's the core of his argument, a lineage distinct from the pure Abrahamic line. It's a complete recategorization, tying this group to ancient pre-human origins and a foundational deviation from monotheism.
And this ties into the cursed tree concept you mentioned.
Exactly. This concept extends further to what Dr. Waleed calls the cursed tree. He asserts it's not a literal tree, but a metaphor for a lineage, a tree of progeny.
Whose progeny?
Specifically belonging to Bani Israel, whom he equates with Yajuj and Majuj. From this lineage, Adam and his pure descendants were warned to stay away, as it represented spiritual corruption.
So intermixing was forbidden.
Yes, and the intermixing of this Yajujic blood with Arabs, Dr. Waleed claims, produced the Arab.
The Arab, usually translated as Bedouins.
Dr. Waleed describes them differently as hypocrites and vacillating in their faith, lacking true conviction precisely because of this mixed, corrupted lineage.
And he sees Abraham as completely separate from this.
Completely. As proof that Abraham is entirely separate from the Majuj, whom he links to Jews from Bani Israel, Dr. Waleed cites the Quranic verse from Al-Imran 3.67. Abraham was not a Jew nor a Christian.
So this argument from Almighty Covenant creates a really stark genetic and spiritual divide. Pure lineage from Adam-Abraham versus a corrupt lineage from this pre-Adamite Israel Yajuj-Majuj.
Yes, a profound divide. He portrays them as fundamentally incompatible, originating from different spiritual sources. This redrawing of genealogical lines has massive implications for understanding who belongs to which spiritual tradition in his framework.
These interpretations certainly build a very distinct framework for understanding religious history and identity. But if Mecca, the traditional one, is deemed unclean and forbidden by Dr. Waleed and identified as Petra, how does this translate into physical locations and acts of worship? Where does he place the true center of spiritual activity?
Right, that's the logical next step. And this leads to Dr. Waleed's most assertive geographical claims presented consistently on Almighty Covenant, which truly upend conventional understanding.
Where is the focus then?
He states unequivocally that Baka, which, remember, he identifies definitively as Al-Quds, Jerusalem in Palestine, is the only true center for pilgrimage, Hajj, to the inhabited house, says the
Only Jerusalem, not Mecca Petra at all.
Not for the true Hajj, according to Dr. Waleed. For him, Al-Quds is the sole place of revelation, healing, and imama, spiritual leadership, for humanity. He emphasizes that all prophets, including Muhammad, peace be upon him, were ascended, meaning taken on a spiritual journey, the Miraj or night journey, to Al-Quds for divine education and communion with God.
So the Isra Miraj reinforces Jerusalem's centrality for him.
Absolutely. He sees it as solidifying Al-Quds as the epicenter of divine communication throughout history for all prophets.
What textual support does he offer for Jerusalem being the sole Hajj site?
He supports this by referencing Surat al-Baqarah, verses 125-126, which speak of the house as a place of return for people and a sanctuary, and taking from Abraham's station a place of prayer. Dr. Waleed argues these verses refer exclusively to Al-Quds.
Not Mecca.
Not Mecca Petra, in his view. Crucially, he argues, as we noted, that Abraham was only blessed with offspring in Baka the Blessed. He directly correlates this sacred fertility with Al-Quds, further solidifying its unique and central spiritual role as the place where true prophetic lineage was nurtured and flourished.
So the implication of Dr. Waleed's stance is a complete reestablishment of Al-Quds as the foundational spiritual capital.
Yes, linking it directly and exclusively to the Abrahamic lineage of prophets and the essence of divine revelation. It effectively recenters the entire Abrahamic tradition geographically and spiritually in a way that fundamentally challenges widely held beliefs.
Okay, so Jerusalem is the true center. What about Mecca Petra then? Is it just irrelevant or is it actively negative in his view?
Actively negative. In stark contrast to Baka hordes, Dr. Waleed designates Mecca, identified as Petra, as forbidden and unclean.
Forbidden and unclean. Strong terms again.
Very. He describes it as a desert land without life or water. Remember the Akim state. He characterizes it as that Masjid Diyar, mosque of harm, built to cause division. He labels it a well of no use, implying spiritual emptiness, and a built palace, suggesting it's just a man-made structure lacking true divine sanctity.
And the Kaaba there.
According to Almighty Covenant, the black cube, Uakoyu, traditionally worshipped there, is linked directly to shaitani, satanic, and idolatrous practices of Bani Israel. He claims this structure is a symbol of their polytheism and deviation.
Wow. So a pagan site, essentially, in his interpretation.
That's the strong implication. Dr. Waleed cites that Muhammad, PBUH, was initially commanded to worship the Lord of the city, referring to Mecca Petra, but then subsequently prohibited it, turning away from it towards the true Qibla, Al-Quds.
So a command followed by a prohibition.
Yes. He even claims, quite remarkably, that Bani Israel themselves are now revealing through their own ancient texts and knowledge that Muhammad and the Quran were not from the desert, lending credence, in his view, to his relocation claims and suggesting a historical deception about Mecca's true role and location.
That's a fascinating claim about Bani Israel's sources.
It is. The profound implication here, as put forth by Dr. Waleed, is a direct and forceful challenge to the traditional understanding of Mecca as the holy city. He repositions it instead as a place corrupted by polytheism and deception, a site of false worship, not true reverence. It effectively reorients the entire direction of prayer and pilgrimage for anyone who accepts his interpretations.
It sounds like Dr. Waleed is building this incredibly precise semantic system, as we hear on Almighty Covenant, where specific terms have very distinct and profound meanings. And these terms aren't just academic. They're used actively to differentiate groups and individuals within the Quranic narratives, especially regarding kinship and lineage.
Absolutely. It's a highly intricate system.
How does he use this detailed linguistic framework to further distinguish between, say, different types of tribes or descendants, like the Asbat we touched on?
Right. He uses these redefinitions to clarify the nature of specific groups, notably the Asbat, and also to distinguish between different types of familial relationships, providing this highly nuanced and often controversial understanding of lineage.
So, back to Sop, the singular of Asbat. What was his specific definition again?
Dr. Waleed claims the meaning of sop is very specific within his framework. It refers to an individual raised by their mother because their biological father has passed away or is absent. The father is out of the picture.
Raised by the mother due to absent father. And he says this is distinct from an orphan.
Yes, distinct from a yatim, orphan, whose definition he clarifies separately, as we'll see.
Okay, so Sop, raised by mother, father absent. How does he apply this to the two groups of Asbat in the Quran?
Okay, first, Jacob's Asbat, mentioned in Surat al-Baqarah 2.136, using al-Asbat. These, he asserts, are Adamite and human, tracing back to Adam.
The ones Jacob raised as Ab.
Exactly. He explains this group includes Joseph and his brother again. He states they were sons of Ishmael's daughter via an Arab father connecting to the pure line. The other 10 Asbat are children of Isaac's daughter, whose father, according to Dr. Waleed, was an Arabian, but with that Yajujic blood mixed in.
Right, the mix explaining their darkness.
That's his explanation. It accounts for their initial wrongdoings towards Joseph, despite being under Jacob's guardianship. So, a complex, mixed group defined by Jacob's mentorship, not pure biology from him.
Okay, that's Al-Asbat, Jacob's awards. What of the other group, Asbatan Umaman from Al-Araf 7.160?
In stark contrast, these indefinite Asbatan Umaman tribes, nations, refer, in Dr. Waleed's view, to those ancient nations of Bani Israel.
The pre-Adamite ones.
Yes, the ones he claims existed before Adam. Their father, Dr. Waleed states, is hidden or passed away, fitting his sap definition in a sense, but they were raised by their mother, whom Dr. Waleed identifies chillingly as Iblis, Satan itself.
Raised by Iblis.
That's his interpretation, a profound spiritual claim about their origin and upbringing. He includes various significant groups from historical or religious narratives in this category. Ad, Thamud, people of Al-Ras, Tuba, Al-Hijr, Al-Fil, people of the elephant, Alka, people of the woods, and even Pharaoh, Pharaoh, and his people.
So all these diverse groups are lumped together as gens of Bani Israel, raised by Iblis.
According to Dr. Waleed's interpretation presented on Almighty Covenant, yes, it completely separates the pure human lineage of Adam, Abraham, Jacob from these corrupt ancient nations of Bani Israel. He portrays them as distinct in origin and nature, fundamentally unclean and polytheistic, owing their very spiritual upbringing to evil forces. It's a complete spiritual and historical recategorization.
Okay, and you mentioned he also defines orphan or yatim differently.
He does, offering equally precise definitions for yatim and also kalala, isolated, again showing his meticulous linguistic approach.
So what is a yatim in his view?
He defines yatim specifically as a child whose mother has passed away and who is then raised by their father, the opposite of the sub-situation.
Mother deceased, raised by father. Any examples?
He cites the example of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who is described in Surat al-Duha 93.6 as being found as a yatim. Dr. Waleed interprets this to imply his mother passed away early and he was raised by his father, fitting this specific definition.
Interesting. And kalala, isolated.
Kalala, he defines as a person who has neither living parents nor children. Isap, SSE, they are, in his powerful metaphor, cut off from the tree of lineage, isolated from direct biological connections upwards or downwards.
Who does he apply this to?
He applies this status to Abraham, presenting him as Kalala, based on Surat An-Nahl 16.76.
Abraham as isolated. But he had Ishmael and Isaac.
Dr. Waleed explains this by stating Abraham's biological parents weren't present in his life, Azar being his foster father, his Ab, not his Waleed, fulfilling the no living parents part. And regarding children, he connects it back to Abraham being a sheikh, not biologically capable of begetting Lam Yunjib in the conventional sense without divine intervention. So, he argues, Abraham fits the Kalala definition at a certain point or in a certain sense.
So these precise definitions of kinship, soft, yatin, kalala, they highlight unique circumstances.
According to Dr. Waleed, yes. They highlight divine patterns and the unique situations of prophets, emphasizing their reliance on God's direct nurturing and intervention rather than standard human family structures. It's almost as if he's suggesting these key figures operate outside the normal human familial matrix because of their divine calling and the specific challenges they faced or roles they fulfilled.
These detailed semantic differences, meticulously laid out by Dr. Waleed on Almighty Covenant, they are genuinely mind-bending. It really sounds like he's constructing an entire alternative history and theological framework, brick by linguistic brick.
It certainly appears that way, a comprehensive and interconnected system.
So, stepping back a bit, what is the ultimate conclusion Dr. Waleed draws from all this, especially regarding what he calls the unclean nature of Bani Israel and the, presumably, urgent call for people to rethink their religious paths based on these profound reinterpretations? What's the final message he wants to convey?
Right, what's the takeaway? Dr. Waleed asserts that the core purpose of his interpretations, derived from his extensive work on the Almighty Covenant channel, is essentially to expose what he views as profound, long-standing distortions and deceptions. Deceptions that, in his view, have led billions of people astray from what he presents as the true original path of God.
Billions astray. That's a huge claim.
It is. He argues unequivocally that Bani Israel, whom he consistently equates directly with Yajuj and Majuj, are inherently unclean, Najis, and fundamentally polytheists, mushrikun. He claims they have consistently deviated from God's verses, actively turning away from divine truth. Remember that core concept of adl as deviation.
And he blames him for corrupting religion.
Directly. He blames their pervasive influence, specifically naming historical figures like Kag al-Habar and Wahab ibn Munabi, early converts, often cited in Islamic tradition, for corrupting religious understanding across centuries.
How did they corrupt it, according to him?
This corruption, he says, has led people to believe fundamental lies about sacred locations, like Mecca being in the desert instead of Petra, about lineages, like the nature of Jacob's sons or the role of Ishmael, and about practices. He points to the belief that Muhammad was buried in a desert or that Mecca is in the desert as examples of these lies, claims that directly contradict his relocation of Mecca to Petra and the true holy city to Al-Quds Bakka.
So specific historical figures introduce specific falsehoods.
That's his argument. He supports this by stating that these groups deliberately united all dualistic concepts to become polytheism to God. He provides examples of what he calls this sick, misguided unification, deliberately confusing concepts that, in his view, should be kept distinct.
Like what?
Like confusing Haram, the sacred precinct, and Muharram, the sacred forbidden month, or conflating Mecca and Bakka as the same place, or confusing Tur Sinin, the Mount Sinai of Revelation in Palestine, in his view, with Tur Sinai, another, perhaps corrupted, mount elsewhere. For Dr. Waleed, these aren't just linguistic similarities or historical ambiguities. They are deliberate acts of spiritual deception designed to mislead.
So the implication from Almighty Covenant is this grand narrative of a cosmic struggle, a fight against deliberate misinformation designed to keep people in spiritual darkness.
Exactly, keeping them away from the true path and, very importantly, the true Qibla, the direction of prayer, which he vehemently asserts is Al-Quds Bakka, not Mecca Petra. It's presented as a historical and theological cover-up of cosmic proportions.
Given this stark picture deception, what's the solution he proposes?
Well, this profound analysis leads directly to Dr. Waleed's impassioned call for a return to what he defines as true understanding. He emphasizes that the true book, the Quran, has been miraculously preserved by angels, not by fallible human charlatans. He's Wuvule. He insists its meanings are precise and unchanging, impervious to the human corruption he describes elsewhere.
So the text itself is pure, but the understanding has been corrupted.
That's the core message. He encourages listeners, his audience, to abandon traditional and, in his view, corrupted teachings and return to their book, to engage with it directly, to purify themselves from these inherited falsehoods and seek God directly. He stresses that God only guides those who actively seek guidance, implying a need for personal effort and breaking from tradition.
Seek and you shall find, essentially, but you have to look in the right way, using the right keys he provides.
That seems to be the idea. And interestingly, Dr. Waleed on Almighty Covenant even challenges listeners to use modern tools to verify the Quran's details, specifically mentioning artificial intelligence.
Using AI to verify the Quran.
Yes. He cites a specific example, the debate around the Star of Elkwoods. He claims AI can supposedly confirm the Quran mentions 199 stars related to this versus a figure of 240 claimed by liars. He suggests that even the creature of the earth, a term sometimes interpreted eschatologically, but which he here seems to apply to AI as a neutral truth teller, speaks the truth against those who deny the Quran's precision.
That's a very modern twist on verifying ancient scripture.
It is. The profound implication for the listener, then, is that they are presented with a stark spiritual choice. Either remain in ignorance and darkness by adhering to traditional, corrupted interpretations, or embark on this path of self-purification and direct engagement with the divine text, using the interpretive keys revealed by Dr. Waleed to uncover the truth and attain spiritual purity and guidance. It's framed as an urgent and dramatic call to action for anyone listening to his message.
Wow. What a journey through these deeply, deeply reinterpreted narratives from Dr. Khaled Waleed's Almighty Covenant channel. We've really covered a lot of ground, how he redefines core terms, challenges established genealogies of prophets, remaps the geography of sacred sites. It's a highly interconnected and definitely provocative vision of religious history. His work truly offers an alternative lens.
It certainly asks us, and you the listener, to reconsider many long-held beliefs. The meticulous linguistic analysis that Dr. Waleed employs, the way he builds his case step by step, and the dramatic conclusions drawn from it, it provides a very distinct perspective. It definitely urges a thorough re-examination of source texts, exactly as Dr. Waleed encourages his audience on Almighty Covenant to do. It's a framework that demands a full reevaluation of assumptions, doesn't it?
It really does. And as always, the goal here on the deep dive is simply to present you with different lenses, different ways to view complex information. This particular deep dive, based entirely on Dr. Waleed's extensive work and as presented on his Almighty Covenant channel, definitely offers a fresh, albeit profoundly challenging way to look at ancient texts and narratives.
Mm-hmm. Challenging is certainly the word.
So what does this all mean for you as you continue your own pursuit of knowledge and understanding? Well, it's perhaps a powerful invitation, regardless of whether you agree or disagree with Dr. Waleed's specific conclusions, to keep digging, keep questioning, keep connecting the dots in your own quest for truth, even and perhaps especially when the answers challenge established norms or deeply held beliefs. It certainly gives you a lot to think about.
أنا دكتور خالد وليد ربان سفينة النجاة إلى شواطئ بكة القدس. I am Dr. Khaled Waleed, the captain of the ship of salvation to the shores of Baka, Jerusalem.